One afternoon, while Adaobi was in her room, lying on her bed, drained from her efforts to avoid her stepmother's Amara cruel taunts, she looked pale, and her breathing was slow, her body exhausted from neglect, and her mind heavy with sadness. Her stepmother Amara storms into the room, carrying a bucket of water. Adobe looks up, confused and frightened as Amara approaches with a menacing glare. Without warning, Amara lifts the bucket and dumps the water over Adobe, soaking her from head to toe. In the heart of the city of Lagos lived a man named Emeka, a man whose story would one day echo through every corner of this land. Emeka was known for his hard work, his dedication to family, and the unwavering love he held for his only daughter, Adaobi. When his wife died in childbirth, Emeka became a single father, and though life was hard, he never wavered. He poured every bit of his heart into caring for Adaobi, who had been born with a disability that made it hard for her to walk, talk, or even care for herself. Emeka's world revolved around her, and for years they were inseparable, facing each day as a team. But life has a way of testing us in ways we can never imagine, and Emeka would soon face a choice that would shake the very foundation of his life, a choice that would make him question his loyalty to his own flesh and blood. One day, Emeka met Amara, a woman who was full of life, laughter, and promise. She was younger, vibrant, and everything he'd forgotten he once desired. Amara made Emeka feel things he hadn't felt since his wife's passing. She reminded him that he was not just a father, he was a man deserving of companionship and joy. And so, after a few months of courtship, Emeka decided to marry Amara. But while Emeka was swept up in this new love, Adaobi felt a chill creep into her life. She watched her father, who had been her only source of warmth, love, and stability, drift farther and farther away. She didn't understand why she felt a knot in her stomach every time her father left her side, but deep down, she knew her life would never be the same. From that day forward, Emeka's attention shifted. He began working longer hours, spending more time outside with his new wife and less time by Adaobi's side. Day after day, Adaobi watched her father drift further away. Gone were the moments of laughter and the small gestures of love that had once made her world feel whole. She was trapped in a silent agony, unable to understand why her father, the one who had been her rock, her only comfort, was no longer by her side. In time, people in the city began to notice. They saw how Adaobi's once bright spirit was dimming, replaced by a quiet sadness that seemed to consume her, and though they whispered and exchanged glances, no one dared to confront Emeka. No one except the oldest elder in the community, Chief Ebuka, a man who carried wisdom in his bones and courage in his heart. I have watched you from the days of your youth. You were a man of honor, a man who knew his responsibilities. But today I see a man who has forgotten his own daughter, the one who depends on him. You have left her behind, Emeka. You have forsaken your own blood. Chief, I would never abandon my daughter. I provide for her. I've given her a home, clothes, food. What more could she need? Answer Emeka. She needs your love, Emeka. The kind of love that cannot be replaced by things. She needs to know her father still cares for her, that she has not been forgotten, said Chief Ebuka. Emeka stood there, torn between his pride and the growing weight of guilt in his heart. For the first time, he felt the shame of his neglect, but he could not bring himself to admit it. Instead, He brushed off Chief Ebuka's words and returned to his new life with Amara, determined to ignore the voices that told him he was wrong. Days turned to weeks, and Adaobi grew weaker. She no longer laughed. She no longer sang the songs her mother used to teach her. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her fragile frame, the weight of loneliness and sorrow. Amara had never wanted to care for Adaobi, a girl she saw as a burden, a shadow from Emeka's past that she could not shake. Though she smiled in Emeka's presence, she barely heckled her contempt when they were alone. To Amara, Adaobi was nothing but a reminder of the life Emeka had lived before her, a life she was desperate to erase. Why don't you try to help yourself? You're not a baby anymore, Adabi. Always so helpless. Can't even lift a glass of water on your own. Amara complains. I I'm trying, but sometimes it's hard for me to move, said Adaobi. Amara scoffed. Hard? What's hard is dealing with a weakling like you. You're a burden on your father, and he deserves better than to waste his life taking care of you. Suddenly Emeka enters, looking tired from work, but happy to see his wife. He walks into the room with a warm smile, only to find Amara already at Adaobi's bedside, pretending, putting on an innocent smile as soon as she spotted him. Amara, still checking in on Adaobi. You've been so helpful. I'm grateful. Amara smiles sweetly. Of course, my love. I only want to make sure she's comfortable. But even as she said the words, Amara's eyes were cold, and Adaobi saw the truth. She wanted to cry out, to tell her father the truth, but a wave of doubt washed over her. Would he believe her over his new wife? Emeka pats Adaobi's head gently before heading off to change, unaware of the pain in his daughter's eyes. Amara's cruelty becomes bolder. One day, while Emeka was away, Adaobi tried to wheel herself into the kitchen, struggling to push the wheels forward. Amara notices, sneering as she watches Adaobi's efforts. Oh, so you think you can finally do something on your own? Hmm. Well, let me help you with that. Please stop. I didn't do anything wrong, cried Adaobi. Amara leaning close, her voice dripping with disdain. You are the wrong thing, Adaobi. If it weren't for you, your father and I would be free. We wouldn't be stuck in this old apartment, dealing with you every day. You ruined his life, and now you're ruining mine. Amara's words sliced through Adaobi, leaving her shaken and speechless. She lowers her head, too afraid and hurt to respond, wishing she could vanish from the world around her. She no longer feels like she belongs, her small sense of security crumbling piece by piece. One afternoon, while Adaobi was in her room, lying on her bed, drained from her efforts to avoid Amara's cruel taunts, she looked pale and her breathing was slow, her body exhausted from neglect and her mind heavy with sadness. Her stepmother Amara storms into the room carrying a bucket of water. Adobe looks up, confused and frightened as Amara approaches with a menacing glare. Amara had reached her breaking point. Every time she saw Adaobi, her jealousy and resentment bubbled over, and today she could hold back no longer. So you think you can just lie there all day while I'm left doing everything around here? Look at you, acting like some kind of princess. And without warning, Amara lifts the bucket and dumps the water over Adaobi, soaking her from head to toe. Adaobi gasps. her body jolting from the shock of the cold water as she struggles to sit up, her clothes clinging to her frail frame. Why, why are you doing this to me? Adobe shivers. Maybe now you'll wake up and stop pretending to be so helpless. You're nothing but a nuisance, Adaobi, and it's time you understood that. Answer Amara. With each drop of water that soaked her skin, Adaobi felt another piece of her heart breaking. She had once known love, the kind that shielded her from the harshness of the world. But now that love seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a life where even the smallest comforts were stripped away. Amara leaves the room, satisfied, leaving Adaobi alone and shivering in her soaked bed. As the door slams shut, Adaobi curls up, clutching the thin sheets around herself, praying that her father will one day see her suffering and take her away from this nightmare. As days go by and Adaobi grows weaker, her spirit crushed, and her health deteriorates, she stops trying to reach out for help, her voice fading into silence. She barely speaks when Emeka visits, too afraid to reveal the truth, too certain that no one would believe her. Trapped in her silent despair, Adaobi felt as though she were slowly disappearing, like a shadow in the night. She could see no end to the pain, no escape from the cruelty that had become her life. And yet, in her heart, she held on to a sliver of hope that her father might see through the darkness and find her once again. One evening, Emeka enters Adaobi's room, noticing for the first time the gaunt look on her face, the empty gaze in her eyes. He kneels beside her, worry clouding his face. Adaobi, my daughter, why do you look so sad? What is happening to you? Adaobi looks away, fear silencing her. She wants to tell him, but her voice catches in her throat, unable to break free. Emeka could feel something was wrong, a shadow lurking just beyond his sight. He couldn't shake the feeling that his daughter was slipping away from him, that he was losing her to something he couldn't yet see. And so he watched, waiting for a sign, hoping that the truth would reveal itself. Emeka had been blinded by his own desire for companionship, but the pain in Adaobi's eyes was something he could no longer turn away from. The silent suffering of his daughter stirred a strength in him, a resolve to find out what was happening in his own home. One night, Emeka pretends to leave the house, but hides just outside Adaobi's door, listening as Amara enters her room. With cruel intent, Amara scolds Adaobi again, her voice filled with venom as she berates the girl for her disability and dependence. Why should I be stuck with you? You're nothing but a burden. If it weren't for you, Emeka and I would have a perfect life. Amara with anger. Emeka, outside the door, hears every word. His heart drops as he realizes the depths of Imara's cruelty and the harm his beloved daughter has been enduring. Rage and guilt swirl within him as he swings the door open, his face contorted with shock and fury, his voice trembling. Amara! How? How could you treat my daughter like this? How could you lie to me and hurt the one person I swore to protect? Amara stood speechless, her face turning pale as she stammers, trying to make excuses. But Emeka was firm, his eyes blazing with fury. His heart shattered as he realized the extent of his own blindness. He had been so wrapped up in his own happiness that he had ignored the suffering of his own flesh and blood. But now his path was clear. He would no longer allow anyone to hurt Adaobi, not even his own wife. With that, Emeka asks Samara to leave his home and end their marriage. He vows to rebuild his life with Adaobi by his side. Emeka kneels beside Adaobi's bed, his eyes filled with regret. My daughter, I am so sorry. I failed you when you needed me the most. I let you suffer, but from this day forward, I swear I will be by your side, just as I was before. Adobe looks at her father, her eyes filled with tears. Slowly, a smile spreads across her face as she feels the warmth of her father's love once again, the love she had almost lost hope of ever feeling again. Papa, I missed you so much. Emeka holds her close, his own tears falling as he realizes how much he had missed as well. They sit together, reunited and hopeful for the future. As the months went by, Emeka dedicated himself to Adaobi's care, focusing on her health, happiness, and recovery. He becomes actively involved in her therapy, helping her strengthen her body and spirit. With Emeka by her side, Adaobi flourished, her spirit renewed and her heart healed. The love she had once lost was restored, stronger than ever before. Emeka, too, found a new purpose, realizing that family and true happiness could never be built on the pain of others. This story carries a powerful moral lesson. True happiness cannot come at the cost of those we love. Emeka learned that while desires and companionship are natural, they should never cloud our responsibilities or harm those we hold dear. When we open our hearts, listen, and protect our loved ones, true joy follows. In the end, Emeka found redemption through the love he had once overlooked. His bond with Adaobi was unbreakable, a love that had survived neglect, hardship, and even cruelty. Together they moved forward, leaving the darkness behind and embracing a future filled with hope, respect, and love. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Let this story remind us of the importance of family, the power of forgiveness, and the strength that lies within each of us to protect and cherish those we love. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories filled with lessons, love, and the beauty of African life.